This is my third time attempting to film this video because the first time the recording didn't record, first of all, and the second time my voice was so fatigued from the first recording that I couldn't finish it. So I had some tea. I also have a script. I have a script to help me put my thoughts together. Don't mind my eyes. They keep going back and forth between the camera and my script. Okay. Disclaimer, I am not a certified professional. I'm not a fitness influencer. I don't have any degrees on this topic. This is my own personal experience, what worked for me, what didn't, and what may or may not work for whoever's watching this video. With all that said, here's how I lost 110 pounds over the course of a year and a half, and I've kept it off. You can skip ahead if you want to get straight into the tips and tricks, all the specifics of my journey, and any advice that might help you reach your goals. But I feel a very large part of what helped me find success, and what may help you find success, is understanding kind of where I was coming from, not only physically, but mentally as well. I decided to get fit sometime around January 2022. I was just uncomfortable with my body, and not even mentally, but physically. I found myself easily fatigued, my clothes fit awkwardly, and I felt like the person that I saw in the mirror was not honestly reflective of who I was or who I wanted to be, so it was time for a change. It didn't feel like an honest representation of me. I hit an all-time high for myself in the weight department. I was 245 pounds, and this was, I'm pretty sure, the highest that I've ever been. And I remember one photo specifically. It was taken during a birthday party for my brother, and I straight up looked pregnant. Yes. Also during this time, there were a lot of big changes happening in my life. Job, I was looking at moving out of my parents' place and getting into my own apartment, and I was really just ready to take control of my life, like in every sense, and really step into adulthood and become an individual. That really was the groundwork. But here's the tricky thing though, this is not the first time I have thought of or gone through this. It wasn't the first time I felt shame or fear or a desire for change. The difference this time around was that I, get ready, loved myself. Really more than a fleeting feeling or a surface level emotion, I really developed an appreciation or respect for myself and my body enough to want to take care of it. I loved myself enough to want my outer appearance to reflect who I was on the inside, but also who I wanted to be. This may be cringe, but I've always, even since I was little, wanted to be built like a Wonder Woman. I found comfort, really, even as a kid, as a little girl, and just how muscular she was, while also simultaneously being very feminine and graceful. And yeah, I just found her so beautiful growing up. So instead of wanting to be as small as possible, or try to fit into society's trendy view on how my body should look, I acted out of love for myself. I moved through love and not shame, and I decided it was time to become my own Wonder Woman. Honestly, no one is immune. No one is immune to bad days or bad weeks or however long of just not feeling confident. I forced myself to revisit the thought that brought me down this path, which was to do it for me. For little me, for future me, and for current me. That's what I was doing this for. Make sure you want to get fit for the right reason. Otherwise, it's not sustainable. Different people discover self-love in different ways. So I can't really steer anyone in any specific direction in order to land where I landed, in order to discover self-love. It's a journey, but for me, it was a combination of surrounding myself with good people, consuming content that wasn't punishing to me, and reinforcing my confidence through my actions. So basically, walking the walk and talking the talk, and being Delulu, like fake it till you make it, and just act the way you want your ideal you to act, and eventually your mental state will kind of adapt to that. Okay, so I've established where I was mentally at the time, but I want to go back just a little bit further to my previous attempts at weight loss and any fears I harbored, and honestly even still harbor, for diving into the decision I made to make a change. I have always been a little bit heavier set. My nickname growing up was Gorda or Gordi, which basically stands for chubby in Spanish, and a lot of that obviously was a poor diet. I wasn't eating the way I should have been growing up. I wasn't moving my body or exercising in the way I should have been, and that led to me developing some really unhealthy habits that I brought with me into adulthood. I remember the first time I developed any sort of dislike for the way that I looked, for my body. I just became aware of it, and honestly, it's around when you might expect puberty. Being a little Puerto Rican girl growing up in the early 2000s was a war zone, to be honest, for any girl's self-esteem. And at the time, skinny was in. Like, not just skinny, like they called it heroin chic. Let that sink in. Heroin chic. So skin and bones, basically, like unhealthily skinny. And I've never been that. I don't think I'm even that now. I don't inspire to be that way. There's nothing wrong with looking that way if that's how you naturally look. But yeah, at the time, that was the trend, that was the standard. And even as a kid, I've always had curves. I've always been a little bit, thicker. I just was comparing myself to what was in at the time. And yeah, it made me really unhappy. That just goes to show, hey, don't base your body off a trend. That's crazy that women's bodies in particular, go through trends, go through cycles of what's in, what isn't. At the time it was being very super skinny. Now it's being very thick. I even see at the time of this recording that the super skinny trend is coming back into style. Combat that, girlies. We're too mature for that now, okay? Beauty is subjective. Uniqueness and individuality is beautiful. And I know that sounds really stereotypical, sparkle, sparkle, joy, joy, but it's true. Especially as an artist, I'm an artist by trade. So I find such beauty in diversity, and body diversity and feature diversity. If everything in the world looked the same, it'd be very boring, okay? Anyway, puberty was around the time I started comparing my body to other girls' bodies in a classroom, on the TV, on magazines, and then on social media. Social media really broke out, Facebook, Instagram, in my early teens, which is a great time to be exposed to that, by the way. And honestly, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, and I'm going to put a trigger warning here for eating disorders in case that's something whoever's watching this is uncomfortable with. You can skip ahead about a minute. This should be pretty brief that I touch on this. However, I will periodically reference kind of this rougher time of my life because it's important to the overall context of me embarking on this journey. Around 13 or 14, I developed anorexia. So basically, I wasn't eating or eating as little as possible in order to achieve the goal I had at the time, which was being as small as I possibly could get. So I went from 180 pounds as a 13-year-old, probably around 5'2", 5'3", to 100 pounds in under the course of a year. So yeah, it was just very unhealthy, not good for me. I was like getting dizzy. I developed heart palpitations. It was just not a good time. Obviously embarked on that endeavor in a very unhealthy way. Thankfully, though, I was able to recover, but I went from one extreme to the next. So I went from heavy restricting to overindulging and binge eating, and the pounds packed on, and I went from looking sick to relatively normal to, yeah, visibly overweight. This continued beyond high school and into college, but especially when COVID hit. Oh my God, food has always been a source of comfort for me. That's nothing new. I feel like that's very common. People find comfort in food, and I still do, by the way. But at the time, this was a world event. This was a stressful time for all of us. So I really was just turning to food for comfort, and I hadn't even graduated yet. Okay, so this is like the steps before, going out into the real world, and this world impacting event was happening, this world shattering event, and I wasn't sure of my future. I wasn't sure who I was, who I wanted to be. And things started to look up. I landed a job in my field. I made new friends. I reconnected with old ones. And I was taking steps to move into my own place. It was really, like I said, stepping into adulthood. And during this time, there was a lot of self-reflection happening. And I was able to heal a lot of parts of myself that needed revisiting. And through that process, I decided, hey, this is another part of myself that I want to heal. And I wanted to do it in the right way. So what is the right way? Obviously, that looks different for everyone. For me, there were a few pillars that define the right way. Making choices that were beneficial to my health, acting in ways that were non-punishing to my mental and physical health, operating in a mindset of self-love over self-hate, and looking at fitness as a part of my life and not the whole. When I had my eating disorder, it consumed everything, completely overtook every thought that I had. I didn't want to fall back into those old habits again, but I also didn't want to stay in this mindset of overindulgence and overdependency on food as a source of comfort. So my goal, again, I was starting at around 220 or 245, girl, and I wanted to get to 180. And now I'm sitting at a comfortable 130 to 140 range. So beyond my goal weight, which I should say, when I hit my goal weight, I was very happy and pleased with staying there. I was perfectly content. But being where I am now is just the result of continuing this lifestyle upgrade. So I went from a size XXL to a size small. And boy, that's taking getting used to, by the way. Okay, so with all that preamble aside, now that you have context to kind of where I started, what the soil condition was like for planting the seed and growing it to be essentially what it is in my life now, I can finally get into what worked for me and how I managed to lose over 110 pounds and keep it off. Number one, this isn't a diet. It's a lifestyle change. This is number one for a reason. This is probably the most important tip out of all the tips or advice I could give. If you want short-term solutions, that's just what they'll be. Short-term, temporary, difficult to maintain. I wanted to change for myself that made it so I never had to have this conversation again. Doing this journey as a new approach on life rather than a desperate attempt to kind of fit someone else's desired perception of me helped me curb my enthusiasm for the process and shaped the sort of decisions I was making throughout the past 2 years of my life. Number two, discover what your calorie deficit number is. This probably isn't going to be new information to anyone, but it's very important. Number one is the most important though, because without number one, everything else doesn't matter. Once you got number one out of the way, number two, you got to find your calorie deficit. At the end of the day, losing weight, burning fat is calories in versus calories out. So the reason we store fat in our bodies is because we have a maintenance calorie count. So what that means is a certain amount that our bodies need in order to function normally. And when we go over that number, our body stores that energy as fat for us later, to use later when we need it. Our body's perceiving our overconsumption as, okay, we're preparing. We're preparing, girl, we gotta save this energy. So going into a calorie deficit is kind of the opposite, is telling your body, okay, girl, we need to use that fat now, and it'll convert more fat and use it in the way that basically you've been preparing your body to use it. So easiest way to find your calorie deficit, at least for me, was using a calorie deficit calculator. Basically look it up on Google, the first things that come up. Those are good resources. I'll post some below. Input your age, your body type, height, current weight, activity level. It'll tell you what you need to put in. And from there, it will let you know what your maintenance calories are and then what your deficit is, and this should help inform some of your decision making. Your activity level affects this number, so keep that in mind. Sometimes the calorie calculators don't keep that factor in play, but you need to kind of keep that in mind. If you're burning however many calories when you're working out, that's part of your deficit. Number three, set a minimum calorie intake, so a calorie and nutrient goal you have to reach. I did this more so to set a boundary with myself, to make sure I didn't fall back into bad habits of over restriction, one of my primary goals was to feel better. Feel better. And you can't feel good eating poorly. You can't feel good if you're not eating at all. Your body needs energy to function. I also know how easy it is for me personally to fall back into those old habits. So setting this rule for myself, again, this is personal guidelines that I followed. Having that minimum benchmark really was a safe rail for me to not feel guilty for eating and to ensure I had enough energy to stay consistent. So even if you don't struggle with falling into habits of over restriction, I feel this is still a good tip for folks because it kind of forces you to take care of yourself in a way and to not over restrict accidentally. Now you have at least a minimum you have to hit. When you over restrict, you either go too far to that to the dark side, or you'll want to quit because it'll feel so hard. So setting a minimum calorie intake, I feel, is good to do in tandem with a calorie deficit. Number 4, find a way to work out that works out for you. So what do I mean by this? I hate cardio. I don't like cardio. I don't like running. I don't like activities that make me feel like I'm panting too hard. I'm sweating. I just can't catch my breath. Hate it. It's not what I enjoy. That being said, I do cardio now, just in a way that I enjoy. When I first started, I felt that cardio, I needed to do it. It was the fastest way to burn calories, which, hey, calorie deficit. I wanted to lose weight, so that's what I jumped into. I hated it. I didn't enjoy it, so I started resenting working out. Now I crave it. I find satisfaction in exercise because I found a method of moving my body in a way that was rewarding to me, in a way that I enjoyed. And for myself, that's weightlifting. That's weightlifting and working out in the morning as opposed to the evening. I was working out after work initially, and I found that after a long day, girl, I was not trying to add to my stressors. I wanted to wind down. Now, for some people, working out after work is preferable because it helps them wind down after the long day of work. Not for me. Not for me. So all this is to say, back to the original point, find a way that works out, that works for you. This is going to involve trial and error. Hate to say it, that's what I had to do. I'm telling you what I learned. Trial and error. I discovered that weightlifting was the way to go, which makes sense since mentally I'm trying to become Wonder Woman. That makes sense. Also, working out in the morning worked for me. It helped kind of establish the mood for my morning. To me, working out in the morning is just like the first start of the day accomplishment, if you will. Really play around and find what works for you. That's what I did. And I found what works for me. I look forward to working out now. I also started working out pretty frequently, like every day. Don't do that anymore. I work out maximum 4 times a week and minimum 2 to 3 times a week. 3 minimum usually, and then 4 maximum. Number 5, track both through pictures and the scale. This is huge. Okay, this is advice I give to friends because this honestly made the largest difference for me. The scale, y'all, is so unreliable. There are so many factors that contribute to that number fluctuating that don't have to do with fat loss or fat gain. Muscle growth, water retention, I mean, oh my goodness, because it's so unreliable, I started tracking my progress through pictures and videos in tandem with tracking the scale. So I found that I gained more motivation because I had tangible progress that I could reference and everything was documented in tandem with everything I was jotting down for my weight progress. Something about comparing a recent photo to one of yourself where you're 20 pounds heavier is more impactful. It hits different than pitting up 2 numbers against each other. Okay, you really see the progress. Sure, you can see the progress numerically, but you really see it in a photo or something. Like, really. Plus, it really just cemented the idea for me that the number on the scale is both unreliable and doesn't fully capture you and your body. You could put 2 people who are shaped so differently, like proportion-wise, aesthetically, and they're weighed the same. They weigh the exact same, but they look so different. So the number isn't what I was after. It was the aesthetic. It was the feeling. Take pictures and video. Number 6, food swaps. Okay, this one as well. Do not restrict, swap. If you restrict, just like with anything else, it's going to feel punishing and harder to maintain. So what was my solution? I feel like now more than ever in our modern world, we have so many alternative popular brands, food, snacks, everything. There's the obvious, right? Like replacing candy with fruit or soda with diet soda. But honestly, even something as simple as switching the bread you buy for a lower calorie option can make a world of difference. And to me, the bread at least, it tastes exactly the same, y'all. It tastes the same. It tastes the same. And sugar-free options, those are my jam. Sugar-free options. Okay, sometimes, yeah, they don't taste exactly how you want them to, but they scratch the itch of sugar cravings. And if you had them long enough, you won't even remember what the regular version of that item tastes like. And it might even, for me at least, seem too sweet when you have it for real. So you can look up low-calorie alternative recipes on Pinterest, YouTube, TikTok. Save those recipes, seek them out, try them out, see what works, what tastes good, and yeah, roll with it. Example, Nick's ice cream. Girl, this was not staged. I have it here. Nick's ice cream. Nick's 260 calories for the whole pint. And usually I eat the whole pint. And I never need to feel guilty about it because those numbers, dude, and it tastes so good. So Nick's Halo Top is another one. Since finding Nick's though, I prefer it taste-wise over Halo Top. Mission, I think it's called Mission Low Carb Tortilla. Tastes the exact same. Tastes the exact same as regular tortillas. Less calories, less carbs. Pretty sure they cost the same. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure they cost basically the same. That's another one. Laughing Cow cream cheese. I knew about her, but I forgot. And I reintroduced her to my life. I always love like creamy and wraps and like burrito bowls and stuff. And Laughing Cow cream cheese, 25 calories per little square. Basically nothing. And it's delicious. It's great. That's another option.
Okay, I wanted to add in this sidebar while I'm editing. I'm having a Greek yogurt banana pudding. Did you know you could just do that? Did you know you could just make your own healthy version of banana pudding? I didn't until one day I did. And obviously, if I'm presented with the opportunity, like if I'm going out to eat to have banana pudding, I'll have it. But for day to day, I can also have it, but have the healthy alternative. I can just do that.
So these are just some examples of the stuff that I have always stocked at this point because they're yummy, satisfying, and appeal and fit within my deficit. So thing is, it can get expensive. I understand that, but that brings me to my next tip. Number 7, eat at home. Eat at home and enjoy the art of cooking. Learn to enjoy it. This is obviously gonna require you to learn how to cook. This is going to take trial and error, like everything else. These are all things I learned through trial and error, okay? And truly finding what works for you, because even though I think anyone can follow a recipe, life gets busy. So you wanna learn things that you can do over again. And at least for me, I wanted recipes that I could make pretty simply and that were yummy and tasty, obviously, but yeah, easy to prepare. I usually go deep on like cooking on the weekends because I have more time to really get into it. If not, yeah, easy to prepare. It's cheaper than eating out, okay? It's cheaper. So you have full control of the ingredients you're putting into your meal. Obviously, that's a big plus for catering to a healthy diet, but it's also cheaper now. I know in this economy at this point, is it really cheaper? Is it really? Groceries are crazy. And I get that, but there are healthy alternatives you can find on a budget. That's probably a whole new video I could make. But yeah, overall, it's ultimately cheaper to stretch ingredients than it is to stretch out an order that you ordered out on. Kind of comes down to that. Number 8, romanticizing the experience. I had to get in my head. I had to get in my head in a really good way. For me, weight training makes me feel like a baddie. It makes me feel like an Amazon, and I carry myself like it. So fits I wear to the gym, the music I listen to, the energy I bring, it's all tied together to make exercising or preparing meals even a good experience. You have to transform the way you do things. Again, if you're leaning into restriction, it's going to become a negative thing. At least it was for me, obviously initially when I was younger, but also at the beginning of this process of me revisiting the idea of losing weight, but yeah, getting fit, taking care of myself health-wise. I didn't want it to be a burden, to feel negative. So romanticize it, and be a little bit delulu in the gym, okay? Whether that means, but I've never done it, but I know it exists. Like for running, I know some people listen to like ambient running tracks. There was an app for this. It would track your run as if you were running from zombies, and you could listen to the audio of you. It was like a LARP running from zombies. Whatever you gotta do, have fun with it. Number 9, a moment on the lips is not forever on the hips. Don't think of cheat meals as cheat meals. They are just meals. Every day is going to look different for you, and it should look different. By the way, it should. Otherwise, it's going to get very repetitive, and it's not going to be sustainable. You're going to get bored and just done with doing the same thing over and over and over again. You can mix things up, whether it's having a quote-unquote cheat meal or just diversifying what you're doing exercise-wise or recipe-wise. But yeah, I really want to stress that it's not going to break the bank, the caloric bank, your progress bank, to have a cheat meal every so often. And listen, I still struggle with this, whether I eat out or order in, as long as traditionally unhealthy foods or portions are not overtaking your day-to-day, as long as I never caught myself falling into those habits over and over again, once again, going to food for comfort, then you're fine. As long as it doesn't become a habit, you're fine. You should absolutely enjoy a dessert, get that pizza, whatever. This will not ruin your progress. It didn't ruin mine. And it operates the same way. The same way as working out for 1 week wouldn't instantly give you your dream body. It's a two-way street. It takes time both ways. So enjoy those little treats. Number 10, food prep or ingredients prep. So you probably heard this one before, meal prepping. Okay, so for me, meal prepping is not the vibe. It doesn't work for me. I don't like predetermining what I'm going to eat like a week or even a few days in advance, because what I'm feeling in the moment may not match up with what is prepared. So if I meal prepped like a burrito bowl and I want a sushi bowl, all of a sudden I'm resenting the meal. I don't want that. So how did I personally work around this? Ingredient prep. So I'd prep proteins like chicken, ground beef, sometimes even fish, or even sides like veggies, rice. By the way, a great alternative is just buying these things frozen. So like frozen diced chicken, frozen vegetables. It keeps longer and it's very easy to prepare. Very, very easy. That way I feel like I have more options, because I literally do. So it's combating that restrictive mindset again. This works for me. Because I work from home, so it may not be an option for everyone. It also works for me because it's my preference. Some folks may like the stability of having meal prepped meals. Some folks may like that. Maybe that's you. It's not me. Again, trial and error. See what works for you. I did try meal prepping, and I discovered I didn't like it. And again, I do work from home, so it's a little bit easier to prepare meals in the moment for myself. But if you're open to preparing a meal either the night before or the morning of, if you are also one to not like to be tied down to a predetermined meal, give it a go. See what works for you. Do some ingredient prep. Number 11, intuitive eating and tracking. You can do both. Sometimes at the same time, and sometimes taking turns. I find that I can get really obsessive with calories, obviously. So obsessive that I throw away every other nutritional value in the food that I'm eating to hyper focus on that caloric value. I mean, yeah, that makes sense. If your goal is weight loss, and it was for me, especially at the beginning. At the start of my fitness journey, I was obsessing over calories again, and I still had that, minimum calories, so that was kind of protecting me there. But yeah, I still found myself obsessing over calories. I decided to, yes, still be mindful of calories, but care more about things like protein intake, about having a balanced meal. If you're wanting to prioritize building muscle, like me, that's a new goal of mine. So I need to prioritize protein. If I have a high intensity workday where I really need to be sharp, I want to make sure I have a balanced breakfast with carbs, fats, protein. By the way, don't feel overwhelmed by all this nutritional value talk. You do not need to become a scholar in all things nutrition before you start. You really don't. It's something that happens gradually. I also thought this when I started. I was really overwhelmed by the concept of learning all these things, but I had to quiet my mind and understand that this is stuff that you come to learn gradually. Hey, I'm still not an expert. I still don't know anything, but I do know that so far it's worked for me the way that I've gone in prioritizing protein intake, having those balanced meals, especially in the morning. That's all I need to know. That's all that worked. Same for you. It doesn't need to be this overwhelming thing. It's okay to be gradual. Number 12, low calorie, high volume. I love feeling full. I love snacking. I love having myself a little treat and a good meal, especially when it's like the week before my period. I am not being super mindful of portion control. So what do? I ensure that I have options available to me that scratch that itch and can reach that high volume desire while being a low calorie option. Okay. So things like fruits, berries, but really all fruit in general, berries specifically, you can slam them. Same with veggies, chicken. I really like seaweed. I like those crunchy seaweed strips. They're so salty and good, and you can just eat like a million of them and it just will not matter. Rice cakes is another one. Oh my gosh, I forget the brand. I'll put up pictures here of the brand, but they have a selection of rice cakes that are so yummy. They're so yummy. Like all the sweet one and the salty ones, they scratch the itch for me. So do your research, try things out, and discover what those high volume food preferences look like to you. Number 13, just show up. This one really changed my mindset for real. So one rule of thumb that I learned to abide by for the gym or just for a workout in general is to just show up. So what do I mean by that? Even if I was not feeling like working out that day, disclaimer, there are days where there's not feeling like working out and there's being so exhausted and fatigued you probably shouldn't work out that day. You have to learn to differentiate. That takes time, and again, trial and error. But on those days that I just wasn't feeling like working out, I would just show up. I would just get dressed and go. I would go and I would do a workout that wasn't super high intensity, that wasn't like best workout in the world. I sometimes would break a sweat, wouldn't even be having breathing. I'd just be kind of there and moving. But just showing up is an accomplishment within itself. And by the way, when I say show up, I mean metaphorically. So it doesn't mean needing to go to a separate location physically, but I mean in the sense of like getting out of bed, putting your workout clothes on, putting on some music, and taking essentially any steps in the right direction. Doing what the ideal version of you would do. It doesn't mean you need to outperform yourself every time or end every workout sweating on the floor about to die. Absolutely not. Some movement, literally any movement, is better than no movement. It's just plain and simple. Because at the end of the day, when you're changing your lifestyle, consistency is key. And consistency doesn't mean doing the same thing over and over or outperforming yourself every time. It truly just means trying. It means when you have an off day or an off week or an off however long, you dust yourself off and you keep going. It's a lifestyle change, y'all. Again, we're back to number 1. Number 14, identify your limits. I'd say this is high up there in the game changers for me. So let me just define what this means for me. I refuse to work out in my period. I won't do it, especially the first 2 to 3 days. I simply won't do it. Like, I know some people actually prefer to work out on their period. It helps relieve some tension, makes them feel better, they say. But for me, no, it doesn't. I don't want to do it. I don't enjoy it. I've tried it. I've tried it and I don't enjoy it. Another one is I refuse to budge on being calorie conscious while on vacation. So I just won't. I'm not a baller. I'm not taking vacations every week. I'm not going out and doing stuff every weekend. If I am out doing something, out to eat, I'm gonna enjoy that meal. It's not every day for me. Again, going back to that moment on the lips is not forever on the hips. It's just things like that, really. Identifying what you're willing to compromise on. And how I went about doing that is pinpointing what would make me unhappy to action on. So things like, hey, working out in my period, it makes me unhappy. I don't like it. So identifying those things and then revisiting that list, identifying, what is unproductive or harmful to me in that list. Is not working out on my period harmful to me? I don't think so. But let's say you like have a drink every day, right? Like an alcoholic beverage. That's not good for your health. That's not good. That's probably a harmful habit. And so that is something you need to identify as, okay, it would make me unhappy to not have a drink every day, but it is overall harmful to me. So what can I do to replace this? Identify your limits. Replace the bad, embrace the good. Number 15, progress isn't linear. All right, y'all. The scale is going to zigzag. This is it's not even a question. It will. Don't let it deter you. You will fall back into poor habits really fast if you let it deter you because, again, this is inevitable. I actually tracked my weight throughout the first year, and almost a year and a half I tracked my weight. And into my journey, you can really see what it means to go for the long haul. And I'll post an image or a few images of what that tracking looked like. I would be stagnant for weeks at a time. I would even gain. And yes, I would feel extremely encouraged when I did so. But this is, again, where the progress images come into play and where, they came really in handy. It helped alleviate any discouraging feelings I would feel from seeing that number go up instead of down or not do anything. And it's almost like a, hey, you made it this far, just keep going sort of boost. It also goes back to needing to fix my mindset towards a lifestyle change rather than a diet, because with a lifestyle adjustment, even if you don't see the progress you want as quickly as you want it, it's still your lifestyle. You still commit to the lifestyle. So you're committing to taking better care of yourself, regardless of what that number was, continuing taking care of myself. And that inevitably, reap results. And not just that, just lasting results, things I'm still on this journey. I'm still living this life and committing to it. So if you're going to embark on a fitness journey, recognize that you will have ups and downs literally on the scale, and find peace and understanding that this is normal and is to be expected. Number 16, comparison is both the thief and grantor of joy. What do I mean by this? Well, your body is your body, okay? What makes us as a species so beautiful, and even outside of the human race, in nature and everything around us, is that we are unique. There will only ever be one of us ever. Even twins, that each person is an individual with their own personality traits, their own likes, dislikes, ideals, and bodies and features. You are uniquely you. So be careful. Be careful about taking inspiration from or trying to compare yourself or your progress to someone else's. Okay, I'm talking about social media again. Social media now. Social media is both a blessing and a curse, right? Being so very aware of other people and having access to things outside of our bubble can be both positive and a negative depending on how we allow ourselves to utilize this tool. It's a highlight reel. So even the pages or people that claim to show you the real reel, still a highlight reel, okay? You're getting a handcrafted version of the story. Even with this video, all the advice and stuff I had to learn the hard way, okay? I had to live it. You're not seeing all the times I had a breakdown or was frustrated with myself, or the fact that, again, that number on the scale wasn't moving, or falling back into poor habits before picking myself up again and trying once more. You're just seeing this. You're seeing these tips. So keep that in mind when looking at other people. on social media, I had to recognize that I cannot compare myself or my body to someone who isn't me. You're setting yourself up for failure and discouragement. So how can comparison then be the giver of joy? If everything I just said is what I just said, just all negative things. Well, John C. Maxwell once wrote, comparing yourself to others is really just a needless distraction. The only one you should compare yourself to is you. Your mission is to become better than you were yesterday. You do that by focusing on what you can do today to improve and grow. There is nothing more motivating than witnessing your own growth. It really is that simple, at least for me. For me, nothing was more motivating than seeing my progress through those videos, through that weight tracker, so the way people are commenting about me, through the way I felt. Weight training is something because you literally feel your progress. You increase the weight. You increase the weight, you increase the reps that you're doing. You can feel the progress you're making. I was spending so much time missing out on the joy of experiencing my own life and my own growth by comparing my progress in fitness and my career, my social life and everything to other people who were not traveling on the same road as me. Keep your eyes on the road ahead. It's like, imagine you're on the highway. Imagine you're on the highway, driving your car at full speed, and instead of paying attention to your own driving, to the road in front of you, you're worried about what the car next to you is doing, and you're just looking at them. You're just looking at them the whole time you're driving. You're gonna crash. You're gonna crash and die. Don't hyper-focus. Obviously, within that same analogy, it's good to be aware, right, of the people around you, of the cars around you. Don't hyper-focus because you're gonna crash. Once I came to that realization, it became easier to find joy in my own success. This is something, by the way, I need to remind myself of daily. Daily, I need to remind myself of this. But when I'm able to land the thoughts, to land that plane of thought, it's a relief. It's a relief. The only person you can fairly compare yourself to is yourself. 17, my last tip, or not tip, I guess it's just lesson I learned or advice I could give, is that it takes time. This also seems very obvious, right? And ties into a lot of the previous points I made, but I really need to send home just how long it takes to lose weight and build your body in a healthy, non-destructive, and sustainable way. Obviously, you can lose an insane amount of weight very quickly in a very unhealthy way. Sure, you can do that, but is that sustainable? Is that good for you? No. Wasn't for me. Definitely learned that lesson. For myself, it took me an entire year to get where I was happy with the way that I looked and felt, and I wasn't even as cut as I am now. Like, I think by the point I had lost 80 pounds, I was perfectly happy. But then the next 30 pounds to be where I am now came super slowly and super gradual, probably 6 to 8 months after that year. So basically almost 2 years from point A to point B. It takes time, and it's a journey of self-discovery. Not to get too deep, but it really is. I not only physically do not recognize the woman I see in the mirror, but even emotionally, I feel so different than I was a few years ago, and I mean that in the best way. In the best way, again, comparing myself to myself. We made some good progress. We're doing good. So yeah, these are all the lessons I've learned while on my weight loss and fitness journey. There are so many other points I could cover within this umbrella of a topic, such as things no one ever warned me about losing weight. So many things, by the way. Healthy recipes on budget, what getting fit helped me to learn about achieving other major goals in my life. That's a whole video. So if you enjoyed this video and you would be at all interested in seeing those additional videos covering this topic, please let me know in the comments below. I have no intention of becoming a fitness channel, by the way. Actually, quite the opposite, really, but fitness is a huge part of my life now and probably always, and I can't help but touch on it and share a little insight as to what finally helped things stick and work for me. But yeah, thanks for watching, and see y'all on the next one, I guess.